There's some big news from Germany because Maybach has just dropped their very first EV, and that is the EQS 680 SUV. So what we're gonna have a look at in this video is, of course, talk about some of the spec and tech of this very blingy car, and then we're gonna jump into Photoshop, of course, have a look at the front, side, rear, interior, talk about that and compare it to the EQS, because now Maybach is actually taking normal Mercedes models and turning them into Maybach models instead of building a completely new platform for the Maybachs. That will bring the price down, of course. So this starts at around $200,000 or something like that. So let's have a look at the car and driver article here and see what's what with this EQS 680 Maybach. It has two electric motors that combine for 649 horsepower, and it offers standard all-wheel drive. It's rated around 285 miles of driving per charge. The normal EQS is a little bit more than that, but this also weighs a lot more than the normal EQS because you gotta pump in all the luxury in this car. I'm gonna show you the concept that I think was released in 2021 or 2022, and that was really good looking for what this is, an EV SUV, and it had 24-inch wheels. However, the production model gets 21 or 22-inch wheels, and those are fantastic looking wheels, even though I wish they came in 23s like we have on the XM, for example. It just fills out this type of proportions better. We're gonna have a look at those wheels in just a second, all of them that comes with a Maybach. 0 to 60 is done in just 4.1 seconds. Not bad for what this is, a heavy luxury SUV. You have air springs with adaptive dampers as standard, and also have four-wheel steering, which I think is a good idea because of the wheelbase of this thing. It's pretty long. I'm also gonna do a quick little redesign because I'm gonna show you how to, in 2 simple steps, completely remove the blob feel of this design by just moving 2 features about 2 inches each. We're gonna do that later when we look at the side view in Photoshop. It has a 108.4 kilowatt battery pack and can charge up to 200 kilowatts on a DC fast charger. The rear seat, this is a car that is about the passengers. You're supposed to be chauffeured around in this. So in the rear seat, we have dual 11.6-inch infotainment screens. That is nothing on what the new 7 Series has, but still it's pretty cool for the rear passengers. And up front, we're gonna go into detail about this hyper screen of Mercedes, which is a giant infotainment screen taking center stage and smaller displays on the side serving the driver with the gauge cluster, for example. So with that said, let's jump into Photoshop here and let's see what's going on. First of all, I want to show you these sketches because I think they are worth talking about because they are so beautiful. These sketches, I love design sketches like this. It just makes me want to pick up a pen and sketch something. But look at these wheel designs. As I said before, Mercedes right now, I think they're doing the best looking wheels coming out of the factory, and I think these designs, they really suit a luxury SUV because we have multi-spoke, a bit styling in this first example here, but it's still very simplistic, and I love the design of this. And having multi-spoke like this, it adds to this luxury feel of the car. And then we have another version down here, but my favorite has to be this design here because this is a modern interpretation of the gorgeous monoblock wheels from the 80s and the early 90s, which I absolutely love. Looks like those old AMG wheels in a new design. I wish they came in 23s on the EQS Maybach. However, if I were to pick a wheel that I would put on the Maybach, it would be these that we have in the sketches. Look at how deep dished these are. This is what I want to see in a big SUV like this. A deep wheel and a very fat rear tire. I don't care if I'm gonna lose 25 miles of range. I'm gonna put these type of wheels on my Maybach anyway because they look so good. And honestly, I'm gonna talk more about this when we compare it to the EQS, but I think this actually works for me. This design works for me. Is it my type of style? Absolutely not. But for what it is, a blingy Maybach, in comparing it to the EQS, I think this actually works pretty well. So let's have a look at this comparison between the two. The EQS, normal, boring EQS up top, and then we have the Maybach down here at the bottom with all the added graphics and all the added details. Just have a look at the grille here, for example. I've always thought that this flat grille that we have sitting flush with the body of the EQS models and having this weird organic shape, it makes it look cheap. It doesn't feel Mercedes to me because there are nothing framing this grille, and also the outline of the grille feels very undefined and fluid. It just doesn't feel like a good Mercedes design to me. But then you have the big Mercedes logo up here to tell you that this is in fact a Mercedes. Now look at the differences on the Maybach down here. They added a lot more features, and this is what I want to see in just normal Mercedes EQ lineup as well. I don't care. Just add some more details and bring back some craftsmanship of the Mercedeses that we have today, and don't make them look plain like this. Specifically when you have a white car with these black graphics, such high contrast, it looks like it's not a complete car, like a prototype that they're working on or something like that. And then you have the Maybach down here. Look at all the details that we have. We have like random Maybach logos in this area all scattered around, and then we have a resemblance of an old grille with these features in the middle, which I think definitely brings up this quality feel that you have of the EQS compared to the normal one. And here is I think this has to be a fourth set of wheel designs, because they were not in these sketches, and these also feel like they suit this type of car, having them pretty covered up, the wheels, and it adds to this luxury feel of this car. I actually like the two-tone design that we have in the Maybach here. I don't know what it is, but it kind of changes a little bit the proportions of the car and make it less bubbly than when we have everything all the way up from this pillar all the way down being the same color. If we break it up right here with graphics, I think it actually looks a whole lot better, and I'm a fan of these color combinations. It feels very stylish, and it kind of suits a Maybach to have these subtle colors, two-tone like we have here. Looking at the side view, and this is going to be interesting because I'm going to show you the changes that I talked about in the beginning. Just two changes: moving the rear 2 inches, moving the top part 2 inches in the other direction, and boom, we have a pretty good looking SUV. I'm going to show you that in just a second. But first of all, let's compare these two. We have a different type of two-tone here in the Maybach at the lower part, as you can see. Now it's gray, and it feels like it's maybe like dark blue up top. And here we have these modern versions of the monoblock wheels. However, yes, I would want to have them just be a little bit bigger. Let's see if we can do anything about that. Just copy these two and then make them a little bigger like this in the rear and then in the front as well, maybe by a couple of inches. Last but not least, just move them down a couple of inches as well. And I think this will look a little better than if we were to have smaller wheels like this. Here you can see the differences, just to kind of plant the car better and have it be more like the concept and the sketch. Do I prefer the concept over this? Yes, I do, because I think that has more of a imposing presence to it, and it looked a whole lot more planted. And I also love the wheels that we have in the concept, and the three-quarter rear view just looked like a proper Maybach. This still looks a little bit like an EQS because that's what it's based on, but it still looks a lot better than the EQS in my opinion. So I guess let's bring it back to stock wheels like this and have a look at the EQS up top here. This is a bit of a what I call a bubbly design. The reason being is this violates one of the very key important rules for car design, and that has to do with the A-pillar position. I talked about this before. We're going to talk about this again right here. We have the A-pillar going down. If we continue this line straight down, you can see that it misses the center line of the front axle, and we want to have that line right in the center of the front axle, specifically when we have an SUV like this. I understand why they do it. Obviously, it's an EV. You don't have an internal combustion up top, which means that this surface here, this area, can be stretched out both in this direction, stretch it all the way back, and the A-pillar can be stretched forward, meaning you have a lot more interior space, but at the same time you do that while sacrificing the proportions, and it makes it into a blob. How could we solve this issue? So what I'm gonna do now is to show you how we can just move this area, the rear axle. We move it this much, like 2 inches, literally 2 inches, and then we move back the A-pillar 2 or maybe 3 or 4 inches backwards, and then we get this design. And going back and forth, you can see that we immediately lose the blob shape of this design, and it's starting to look pretty good if we just do those type of changes to the car. But of course, then you would sacrifice the interior space, and I don't think Mercedes would go in that direction. Looking at the rear end, I don't know what it is that makes it different from the normal EQS EQS because they look very, very similar. We do have, it looks like we do have more of these squiggly lines in the Maybach. We have a few more squiggly lines right here than we have in the normal EQS 450 up here. Maybe that adds something to this design, but what I think it is, I think it has to do with the wheels. Again, the wheels on this car. And this just goes to show how important great wheels are for a design and how they can completely transform how the car is planted on the ground, specifically from a 3/4 rear view like we have here. And I also think again that this two-tone helps by reducing this mass, this height that we have going from this area all the way up being completely white, and we break that up with graphics with the two-tone color that we have on the Maybach. Another detail you can see is different is this diffuser or whatever this piece is, almost a diffuser diaper because it doesn't have any connection to the rest of the body. It just floats by itself down there, but we have a different design of this, so they add a little bit more texture to it. Also, one detail that I love, not a lot of people will notice these ridges that we have going here, but these are the things that makes the car design interesting to look at, not just in the exterior, but I think more so these days. We need details like this, styling features that just adds to the styling. It doesn't necessarily have to have a function, but it makes for an interesting place to be in, and when you walk around the car it makes a lot more interesting details to look at. Last but not least, let's have a look at this hyper screen that Mercedes have implemented in their EQ models. I think it's an option on some models, and probably the Maybach is most likely standard. But the thing is, okay, we're moving into screens now. I have to accept that fact that going forward is gonna be a lot of, if you close your eyes and feel around the interior, you're gonna feel a lot of blank, cold surfaces instead of nice knobs and clicks. But if we have this integration that we have here, I think this is, for what it is, I think it's a pretty good integration for two reasons. We have the EQS up here and we have the Maybach down here. I love the steering wheels of Mercedes. They look very nice. I love this little ball that we have in the center of the steering wheel. It looks nice. It's a detail that I want to just feel and touch. Same with these spokes on the side. It feels like they're very high quality and well done, and we have this beautiful chamfer going in, and we have, actually this is the Maybach up top. My apologies for that. I should have switched them, but we have the Maybach obviously up top because it's still sitting in this Maybach lounge or something, you know, being photographed, so I should notice that. And then we have the EQS down here at the bottom. But looking at the Maybach here, and what I think Mercedes needs to get some credit for is the integration of these screens. They could have gone the simple, lazy route by just adding a big screen right here that it has zero integration in the rest of the interior. But instead, they put in some effort and made it follow the lines of the rest of the interior. Even though it is a big, cold, sterile surface when you touch it, at least they have it integrated in a pretty beautiful way in the interior. So that's reason number one. I also love this wood texture that we have here. Gives me some kind of boat vibes when I look at that. Very beautifully done. And that was the first reason, the integration of the screen. The second reason is that we still have a housing for the gauge cluster. Look at this. They decided to not skip out on the housing for the gauge cluster, which a lot of people in very sunny areas are going to appreciate, because it's not going to give as much glare and reduce the contrast of the gauge cluster when the sun is right on the dial. So you're going to see it better, and it also looks a lot better than just having a blank screen in front of you. Overall, I think this Maybach is a huge step up in the design of the EQS. It has a lot to do with graphics, and it has a lot to do with wheels as well. Those are the two key features that kind of transforms this design into something that's actually pretty interesting and something that I would like to experiment with and see in real life, analyze all the details on. So very well done, Mercedes. And I'm probably not gonna see them here in Colorado. I would have seen them all the time if I were still in South Florida, but hopefully one day I get to see one of these in real life.